Today, we are diving deep into one of the most powerful and honestly heartbreaking stories in all of Norse mythology, the tale of Brynhildr. She was a divine warrior, a Valkyrie, caught in this incredible web of fate, forbidden love, and just devastating deception. Her journey, from a literal servant of the gods to a mortal queen bent on revenge, gives us such a raw look into a world where honor was absolutely everything. And it all really starts with this one question. For Brynhildr, a choice she made based on her own sense of what was right, well, that was seen as an act of cosmic defiance. And that single decision would strip her of her divinity and set her on a collision course with a legendary hero, a cursed ring, and a destiny that was just soaked in tragedy.
Okay, so to really get why Brynhildr's fall was so catastrophic, we first have to understand just how high up she was. She wasn't just some warrior. She was one of the All-Father Odin's most favored Valkyries, a divine agent carrying out his will on the battlefields of mortal men.
Now, when you hear the word Valkyrie, you might picture these sort of ethereal figures with winged helmets, right? But in the original sagas, they were fierce. Their name literally means chooser of the slain. And their job was to execute Odin's will, making sure only the absolute bravest, most valiant warriors made it to Valhalla to fight in the final world-ending battle.
This table here really breaks down what made them so unique. You can see their origin. Often they're the daughters of kings, which already kind of bridges that gap between the human world and the divine. They were immortal, powerful, but, and this is the key, they were still subject to Odin's authority. That vulnerability to a higher power, that's the crack where this whole tragedy begins.
And here it is. This is her original sin. You've got a battle between two kings. Odin commands that victory must go to King Hjálmgunnar. But Brynhildr, on the battlefield, sees that the other king, Agnar, is the more worthy warrior. So she follows her own judgment. She strikes down the king Odin had chosen. Now in the Norse world, this wasn't about good versus evil. This was an act of pride. It was her asserting her own will over the cosmic order that the gods had set.
Odin's punishment was swift, and it was absolute. He pricked her with a sleep thorn, literally stripping her of her immortal status and condemning her to the life of a mortal woman. He then casts her into this deep, enchanted sleep, but he protects her with a ring of fire that only the bravest hero in the world, a man who knew absolutely no fear, could ever hope to cross. In one move, she went from an agent of the gods to a prize for a mortal man.
So that wall of fire sets the stage for a hero to arrive, but when he does, he brings with him an object of immense power and a terrible curse that's going to bind their fates together forever.
And that hero was Sigurd, the great dragon slayer. After killing the dragon Fafnir, he gained the ability to understand the speech of birds, and it's the birds who guide him right to Brynhildr's fiery prison. When he rides through those flames, it's the ultimate proof. This is the man she was destined for.
But here's the problem. Sigurd is carrying this ring, Envarinat, that he took from the dragon's hoard. And as you can see, this ring has a very dark past. It was originally stolen from a dwarf named Envari, who put a curse on it. It would bring ruin and death to anyone who possessed it. Sigurd has no idea that by taking the ring, he's just claimed his own tragic destiny.
So when Sigurd awakens Brynhildr, is this incredible moment. It's a meeting of equals. They fall deeply in love, and they swear unbreakable oaths to each other. And to seal this sacred promise, Sigurd gives her the most valuable thing he has, the ring, Envarinat. He unknowingly binds the woman he loves to a deadly curse.
You'd think that's the happy ending, right? But their perfect union is tragically short-lived. Sigurd leaves, promising to return, but he winds up at the court of the Burgundians. And this is where the story pivots from a heroic epic into a domestic tragedy fueled by sorcery, jealousy, and ambition.
The queen of the Burgundians, Grimhild, sees Sigurd's immense power and she wants it for her own family. Her plot, as you can see here, is just devastatingly effective. First, she gives Sigurd a magic potion that makes him completely forget Brynhildr ever existed. Then, she marries him off to her daughter, Gudrun. And when her son, Gunnar, wants to marry Brynhildr but can't get through the fire, she convinces Sigurd to magically take Gunnar's shape and win Brynhildr for him.
So Sigurd, disguised as Gunnar, rides through the fire a second time. Brynhild, thinking he's Gunnar, agrees to marry him. For the 3 nights they spend together before the wedding, Sigurd lays his bare sword between them in the bed, a symbol that he honored his oath and remained chaste. But, and this is so important, he takes back the ring and a Varanat from her finger. He unknowingly takes the one piece of evidence that will prove his own betrayal.
So now you've got these two couples living in the same court, under this massive web of lies. A deception that fragile can't possibly hold forever. All it's going to take is one single spark of pride and jealousy to tear the whole thing down.
And that spark happens, of all places, while Brynhildr and Gudrun are bathing in a river. They're arguing over whose husband is greater, and Brynhild boasts that her husband was the one brave enough to ride through the fire. While Gudrun, completely stung by this, blurts out the terrible truth. No, it wasn't Gunnar. It was Sigurd, in disguise.
And then comes the dagger twist, the final undeniable proof. Gudrun holds up her hand, and on it is the ring and Varnaut, the very same ring Sigurd had given to Brynhildr on that mountaintop. For Brynhildr, seeing that ring, the symbol of her sacred oath with the man she loved, on another woman's hand, it doesn't just break her heart, it shatters her entire reality.
The psychological impact is just catastrophic. The saga says she falls into an icy sorrow, a grief so deep and so cold it turns into this focused rage. She's been betrayed by the one man she loved. She's been tricked into marrying a lesser man, and her honor has been completely destroyed. And in the world of the sagas, a shame this deep can only be washed away with blood.
At this moment, Brynhild completely transforms. She becomes what's known as a wedder in dramatic literature. Basically, a woman who uses her words like knives to push the men around her into taking violent action, all to restore her own lost honor.
Her plan is as manipulative as it is deadly. She starts by lying to her husband Gunnar, claiming that Sigurd broke his oath and slept with her during the 3 nights of the deception. This forces Gunnar's hand, but he and his brother are bound by oaths of blood brotherhood to Sigurd, so they can't kill him themselves. Instead, they goad their younger brother Guttorm, who isn't part of the oath, and they whip him into a frenzy to do the terrible deed for them.
Guttorm sneaks in and murders Sigurd in his sleep, and when Brynhildr hears Gudrun's heartbroken screams, the saga says she lets out this awful, joyless laugh. Her revenge is finally complete. But in that same moment, the rage breaks, and she reveals the whole truth to everyone. Sigurd was innocent. He never broke his vows. She has orchestrated the death of the only man she ever truly loved, all to reclaim her honor.
So with Sigurd dead and her vengeance fulfilled, what is left for Brynhildr? Well, there's only one path left for her to take. But what's fascinating is that her story doesn't just end as a personal tragedy, it's a legend that echoes with the ghosts of actual, real-world history.
You know, a lot of scholars believe this entire saga is a mythologized retelling of things that really happened. You can see on this slide, characters like Gunnar can be directly linked to a historical King Gundaharius of the Burgundians. And Brynhildr herself, she bears a striking resemblance to Brunhilda of Austrasia, a real-life 6th century queen whose life was just full of political murder and family feuds.
And this timeline really shows how memories of real historical trauma, like the utter destruction of the Burgundian kingdom by the Huns, were passed down for centuries. Over time, they slowly transformed from history into the epic myth that was finally written down in the 13th century. The saga really became a way for people to process the violent collapse of their entire world.
And that brings us back to Brynhildr's final choice. She's unable to live in this world of lies and broken promises, so she takes her own life and asks to be placed on Sigurd's funeral pyre, with the sword Grom laid between them one last time. In death, they could finally be united in a way they never could be in life. And this leaves us with the story's final, haunting question. When every single promise has been broken and all honor is lost, is a shared flame the only path left to redemption?